Hello, I'm Dr. Diane Janosek, CEO of Janos LLC, specializing in cyber compliance, and I'm so excited to be here today with your Cloud Trust Summit for 2025. I appreciate what CSA is doing, and I first got to know CSA as they're starting to ramp up their Continuous Automation Revolution Initiative, which is their CAR working group. And as part of that, CSA is supporting a collaborative, innovative environment to introduce best practices in cloud computing, as well as streamlining compliance by design. I'm excited about strengthening the security posture of cloud environments across all sectors. We all want to join in and kind of raise the bar. So CSA and their CAR initiative has an inclusive approach to gathering experts across the global community, and it's definitely a model, because in the cyber world, so much what we have to do is working as a team. It's a team effort, and we need to come together across continents, across geographic boundaries, across sectors to raise the bar. So thank you so much. Cyber effects in business. So today I'm going to be covering different topics surrounding the business decision making. Right, as we know, cyber is really a risk management decision. How do you address it? How do you mitigate it? What you accept as risk? It's a business decision. It's a management decision. So how do you see that? How do you measure risk? I thought I should go in today about cyber effects in business, about what impacts the bottom line? What is cyber doing for that? So we'll go over considerations and mergers and acquisitions. We'll go over some examples of cyber breach history and the impact on business valuations, regulatory fines and lawsuits just for situational awareness, acquirer due diligence, what you should do if you're going to be acquiring another, and stock price fluctuations. And as you know, with the cloud, there are lots of different entities these days in every single business. You no longer own your own infrastructure, and you don't always defend your own infrastructure, right? You might have a lot of different services out there in terms of who's helping you in your environment. So with that, I thought I'd share what is the risk to doing that. If you're no longer a mom and pop organization where you do everything yourself, turn the lights on, lock the door, take care of the roof. These days, businesses are extremely different, completely digitally reliant. And so how does that translate into the business world? Great. Consideration in M&A transactions. So I alluded to this, but I think we all know it, but sometimes it's nice just to cover it, right? Just to state the obvious. A cyber breach history significantly values or impacts your valuation. You can say, of course I know that. But what people don't always realize or appreciate or fully appreciate is what is that dollar amount? What is that price reduction? How did it renegotiate or cause the terms of a deal to break down and be re-looked at? What happens with regulatory fines? If you're going to be selling down the road and you did receive a regulatory fine, you're going to have to disclose that prior to selling. And that may impact your valuation. Acquisitions may add unforeseen costs. Through the due diligence process, you may find something out about yourself in terms of your network, and you might have to go back, do some remediation, show that you've done that, show what you've mitigated, how you've mitigated it, and that may just add costs unexpectedly to your acquisition. Also, acquirers must conduct cybersecurity due diligence to avoid inheriting liabilities. What does that mean? And just break that down. Acquirers, people that are interested in buying the companies, or there's a lot of buying and selling these days with cloud, with cyber compliance becoming so important. So as part of that, as you buy a company, you have to do your own cybersecurity due diligence. You want to make sure that the company that you're partnering with, and this also has to do with if you're just partnering to a third-party agreement, you got to make sure that the other guy isn't the weakest link, right? Or the other gal isn't the weakest link. You really want to make sure that they have the same standards that you have as you enter into a partnership or into a future acquisition. And then lastly, there's stock price valuations. If you are a publicly traded company, stock prices definitely are impacted as a result of acquisitions and discoveries of breaches during the process. So I think the one that we all know about the most, and I think if I asked you, do you remember, what was the first one that really, kind of opened up our eyes to saying cyber compliance matters to the bottom line? I would say it's almost 10 years ago, back with Yahoo. Remember with their AOL emails, they were selling to Verizon. Verizon wanted to purchase them. And as a result of Verizon doing their due diligence, as I mentioned, the cyber due diligence, what happened? Verizon identified that they had a long-term breach. It wasn't Yahoo. Yahoo, who should have had some type of higher level due diligence done prior to an external party coming in and do a third party due diligence review, Yahoo did not have their processes zipped up. They didn't even know that they had a breach that had occurred months before. That was that was really eye-opening, right? I think for a lot of us, if you remember that. And as a result, Verizon saved $350 million in a price reduction. I don't know about you, but I think that's a lot of money back in the 2016 timeframe. That was considered a big deduction in price because of the lack of mature security practices being undertaken by Yahoo. And they also had to do a significant breach notification. I know a lot of people, as you know, used to use the Yahoo for email, their different email platforms, as well as other services, and they should not have had this happen. So that was a big issue for them. So first example back in 2016, a loss of $350 million. Then we go to Marriott, people staying at hotels. Marriott discovered in their acquisition of Starwood, the hotel chain, that there was massive regulatory fines that they were going to have to incur as a result of a breach. So they purchased it, didn't realize that there was a breach, had to report it, then had a regulatory fine of $120 million. So that's almost the worst case scenario, isn't it? It's almost like buyer's remorse, I would say. Equifax, and I know a lot of people remember this Equifax. I was alarmed because it's, affects every single person. Our social security number is used for every credit transaction out there. Equifax is, a main holder of all of that data, extremely sensitive data, and they had a data breach. Of course, it's going to impact their market value. It also impacted their brand, their reputational standards, or just their reputation at writ large, saying, Equifax, what are you doing? Like, how can you take on this responsibility of such an important role? It underpins our financial sector, the housing market, just basic credit. It affects everything that we do. Your credit score is kind of like who you are in terms of your integrity as a person. And here they let that go. So Equifax stock plummeted 35%. So it wasn't tied to an immediate acquisition, but definitely had an impact. So you often hear, oh yeah, when there's a cyber breach, there's a brand impact. Oh, when there's a cyber breach, they're going to lose money. So they lose money how? By negotiating prices down, reputational damage, regulatory fines, your stocks plummeting. All those things can happen. So let's move to a little bit closer to today. SolarWinds happened in 2020, as you recall, because it affected a lot of different entities. I think it was $1 billion of losses worldwide from the SolarWinds breach. That cyber attack, without a doubt, undermined SolarWinds' future valuation. It dropped 40% in their stock, and they had to wait to do their spin-offs for other business units. So it just set them back. Without a doubt, it set them back, especially just loss of trust by their customers. People, once again, expected more from a software entity to do more in the area of cyber due diligence. And the fact that they were not better prepared, better security, really impacted them both financially and reputationally. And I know that they've really tried to clean things up, and I know that their CISO was, a great person, but at the end of the day, there was a lot of business impact, let alone personal impact to the people involved and a number of the businesses that were then victims as a result of the cyber attack. Okay, then more recently, we'll move up to 2023, Spirit AeroSystems and Boeing. So the cybersecurity impact on their M&A talks. Spirit AeroSystems was a key Boeing supplier, and it suffered a massive ransomware attack, and it disrupted operations. Right? You can imagine, right, with planes going all over the world, transportation sector. The fact that Spirit AeroSystems had a ransomware attack and disrupted Boeing's operations, that means it impacted Boeing. So it was a supply chain, down the supply chains that impacted it. So you'll see here in digital telecommunications, it impacted it. in lodging with the Marriott, in leisure, it impacted the financial sector with Equifax. Solar winds, there was a lot of transportation and logistics entities that were impacted from it, including energy and the defense sector as well, and then the transportation sector with Boeing. So cyber really cuts across all sectors and impacts almost every decision in business today. Cyber compliance considerations and mergers and acquisitions. So a little bit about myself. I did law for a number of years, and then I started doing national security law, intelligence, and then I moved over to getting a master's in strategic intelligence, and my PhD is in cyber leadership. And I ended up my career in the government in the compliance arena. So I've been focusing in the last couple of years with Janos LLC on cyber compliance. And cyber compliance, as we know, is getting more and more headlines because in the U.S., as you know, the CMMC, which is in the Defense Department, they're rolling that out. Cybersecurity maturity model is being rolled out, and they're expecting whoever you partner with, including companies that operate in the cloud, have a higher level of cybersecurity maturity. If you are a publicly traded company, you're then bound in the United States by the Security and Exchange Commission. They likewise have mandates on cyber compliance. So cyber compliance is not fun, but it can be enjoyable to practice in, but it's not fun if you don't pay attention to it, because it can really come back to haunt you. So the most important thing is just knowing what the expectations are, what they get expected of me, what's expected of my partners, what's expected of our operations, global operations, and just have a higher confidence level in what's expected of you so that you can meet that bar and exceed that bar. So pre-M&A. So I was going to divide this slide up into cyber compliance considerations and mergers and acquisitions. So prior to buying and selling, listeners that are on this call and attending today, you know that, let's say you want to sell your house, your primary residence. You know that you got to do a lot of things before you even start having that open house, right? You want to make sure things are in order. You want to make sure that your roof doesn't have any leaks or no shingles are falling off. And you want to make sure that there's nothing in the foundation of your house. And you want to make sure that the water faucets are working properly and all the lights are working properly and there's nothing obvious and then there's nothing behind the wall such as mildew. The same exact preparation that you would make to sell your house is similar to being deliberate in what you would do to sell your company, and it's also just to partner, because this is good practice for partnering with others. So most important thing is you want to really pull up, if you're going to prepare to sell, you want to make sure that you pull up and identify your regulatory and your compliance risks, as well as your data breach and incident history. So why would that be important, right? You want to be able to demonstrate. It's okay if you had a breach. You want to be able to demonstrate, one, that you found it, and two, how you resolved it, and how did you disclose it to your stakeholders, and how mature were you in escalating the knowledge of what just happened, and not being afraid of it, but acknowledging it and moving forward. The second thing that you want to do prior to entering into partnerships or potential sales is you want to make sure you do a review of your security infrastructure. Look at your networks. If they ask you questions about what your encryption is, be able to respond to that. Be able to provide third-party information on who your suppliers are, who your partners are, if you have a high confidence level in what they're doing with their networks. This is all about cloud trust. So a lot of this is, can you trust the entity that you're about to do business with? And trust with people is more like, what's the sense there, right? But when we're talking about in the business area, you need a lot more than just a gut feeling. You need to be able to demonstrate and have the data, the records. You want to make sure that you have a strong cyber program management team in place. The third thing, cyber risk valuation modeling. Take a look. See if you can estimate a financial impact and what your risk exposure would be. How are you going to provide for that? Do you have cyber insurance? Are you self-insured? How have you mitigated some of your potential risks if you were to have have a breach? Fourth, security ratings and audits. Use external penetration testing beforehand. I definitely recommend that if you're interested and being able to say, which I'm assuming you will be, we are confident in our abilities to identify whether or not our perimeter has been breached. How do you demonstrate that? You use an independent external penetration testing service beforehand. Find out what they've discovered. Use their recommendations to make those mitigations, make those improvements, or identify the risk and say we're going to accept that risk. But make that available and say we have done this work before. We have done this review, we've done a penetration testing, this is what we found, and this is how we've mitigated it, and this is our commitment going forward. Financial reserve consideration, as I mentioned in terms of self-insuring in the event of a cyber attack. If you did all this work and you realize that you're probably not as strong or as mature as you need to be, you either have to invest in that maturity or you need to reduce your valuation. And so you can be honest too, say, we're not as strong as we'd like to be. We do have some good things in place. We've got some policies. We've got some training. We're probably not as secure as we should be. But in that area, you need to be honest and say, so we believe that there's an adjustment appropriate for that. And so that if you state it up front, it might save you being reduced even further in your valuations. Trust is a hard thing in the business world. So you have to be able to demonstrate with some relative level of confidence why you think they should trust you to partner with you, purchase your company, merge with your company. Just in today's world, due diligence is kind of, the bottom line. Like, if you're not going to do it, then we don't want to be bothered with you. So it's just an interesting paradigm how cyber now is becoming the very center of business decisions as part of partnering and mergers and acquisitions. So hopefully that covered what you needed to know in the pre area and post-merger. So as we know, a lot of mergers and acquisitions go well in the beginning, and then they start to fall apart when you actually have to start combining assets, combining policies, combining people, combining programs. They're kind of good, separate. You bring them together a little bit, but when you really want to do the true efficiencies post-merger, that is really most likely the hardest area for companies, and we've just seen that. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that yourselves. You probably have gone through that. You probably have better examples than I would have. So post-merger, security policy harmonization. Every entity most likely has an incident response. Policy, a program, how they're doing their SOC monitoring. They probably do it differently than the entity that they're partnering with. How are you going to harmonize that? How are you going to bring it together and be efficient? What's the training program? How do they manage insider threat mitigation? How do they implement cyber awareness? Just even the lingo is important in terms of really pulling together post-merger entities. And what's the number one thing? Is culture. And I know you all know about that, especially when you're talking about cloud trust. Culture is a big part of who we are in humanity and our environments for which we work. Every organization is slightly different. Their business values, their value propositions might be slightly different. And so the culture towards security, whether or not they embrace it, whether or not they see it as like, oh, we don't, it's there, but we don't really need to pay attention to that. Every organization is slightly different. So cultures will impact employee training and insider threat mitigation as you combine programs for different entities. It's not good or bad. It's just got to make sure that you're aware of it and that you truly adopt the best practices of the entity that has the best practices, maybe not just because they were the ones that did the acquiring. The third aspect of post-merger is continuous monitoring and threat detection. How are you going to conduct a compliance audit post-merger? Who's going to take primacy? Who's going to operate? There's a lot of nuances there, and it's important to talk through and not put it off. So say, you know what, this is difficult. A lot of times people move it to the left if you don't have to, if you don't want to pay attention to it. But in this area, really focus it up front and say, okay, we're going to start doing compliance audits. We're going to do it this way. Let's work together so that we have a stronger compliance program in our cloud security that we're working with. In zero trust architecture, as you know, the Department of Defense is really focusing on that. There's a lot of entities that support the defense industrial base or part of the defense industrial base. So zero trust architecture is very important, and being able to demonstrate how you've achieved that will be very important post-merger. And all of these elements are directly involved with protecting the business value and also brand reputation and your stakeholders' trust. Incident reporting. I wanted to mention that in this world that we live in the different sectors like transportation or energy or the financial sector or healthcare, there's different overseers. And so there's different governing bodies. Then there's different time periods. It's just a little bit of a challenge in terms of when do you have to respond to an incident. And so that's good to know, because a lot of these times in mergers and acquisitions, companies might be very complex organizations, right? They may be in one or two different sectors. They may service multiple entities across geographic regions, across continents. And so who do you have to report to and when is a challenge. You've got to really break it down and look at it. So the gray area I mentioned was, let's say you're operating and we are running a SOC across multiple continents, because you have somebody maybe in Israel, a company here in the United States that you're supporting, as well as somebody in Belgium. Those are three different governing bodies and probably three different time periods as well on who to report to. And the other thing that matters in terms of reporting is, what is an incident? Do you have to report it? Is it significant enough? Is it material enough? How do you know if it's material? Who decides if it's material? Did the incident occurred? Is it a potential incident? There's a lot of confusion in terms of terminology. So here's one of the slides I have on the difference in the timing. 8 hours up to 60 days is a big difference, right? So harmonization efforts. And I really appreciate the audience today, because my guess is you know exactly what I'm talking about here. No one likes to be held to a standard that they don't understand or fully appreciate, or someone's thinking something different. When you were growing up and your mom would say, I need you to clean your room, you'd say, okay, and then you can go outside and play. You're like, great. You run around, you clean up your room, and then you're ready to go outside, and she says, wait a minute. That's not clean. Get back in there. That happens in cyber world too, right? You say, okay, and I know that you've had this happen to you. I served as a CISO. It's happened to me, where you see something, you see a whole bunch of different things coming in. You're like, wait, we have an intrusion. We think we have a potential incident. We got to make sure that we review it. And then you go back later and you realize, actually, there was a system error. It wasn't an intrusion at all. But how do you define when an incident occurs? How do you escalate an incident to becoming significant? How do you describe that within a report? What report should be filed? How many times does it have to be filed? So there's a lot of different people out there and organizations, including CSA, that's saying, we need to think this through. This is just too hard. And I'm sure if you look when you were growing up, and every mother on that block probably had a different standard of clean, and the kid had to figure out what standard that was. Well, same in the cyber world. What country you're in, what sector you're in, what is a standard for an incident, what's the standard for reporting an incident, what's the standard for reporting when something becomes significant, when do you have to do breach notifications and privacy impact assessments. There's really a gray area right now. So it's a lot of fun stuff. And the reality is that professionals in the cloud security area appreciate that there is ambiguity and are trying to move forward to voluntary standards to reduce the level of ambiguity. We all want the A, but we have to know what the A is to achieve the A. So I think that's where I would like to go on to kind of end on this harmonization efforts, was because this is where we all come together, right? And that's why I appreciate, as I mentioned in the beginning, Cloud Security Alliance, CAR Working Group, and I'm sure they can add a little, you'll find out more about that as part of your event these 2 days. So thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you a little bit about kind of what's going on in the cyber effects world with business. Okay, and there's my contact information. My email is diane@dianejanosek.com. My website is dianejanosek.com, or also janosllc.com. It'll take you to the same place. I have a number of publications. I've published dozens of articles, academic, and then just some like journal type of articles on cyber compliance, cyber law, space security, lots of legal issues, policy issues, leadership concerns, And you can find them under the tab under publications off of janosllc.com under the publications tab. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like to. And I just want to applaud all of you for coming together and thinking about ways that we can improve our collective cloud security, how we can figure out ways to trust but verify, the old Ronald Reagan. How do you trust but verify? And knowing that we're in a world that trust is hard to come by. With deep fakes and how good AI is, with blended identities and digital twins and hallucinations, the AI world is going to change so much. And so the fact that you're all here talking about cloud trust, I applaud every single one of you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. And if I can help you in any way in the future, as you go to try to navigate the cyber compliance world domestically or internationally, or if you're going to enter into a merger and acquisition, or just like a complex partnership, hope I can help you, and I look forward to hearing from you, and have a great day and a great 2 days. So have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.